My brother, Mark, stood in my living room, a bottle of deep red wine clutched in his hand. "Happy birthday, man," he mumbled, thrusting it towards me. It was an expensive vintage, a Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa, the kind he knew I appreciated. A peace offering, perhaps, after months of strained silence following our last argument, a petty squabble over a family inheritance that had spiraled into something much uglier. I took the bottle, the glass cool against my palm, and forced a smile. "Thanks, Mark. This looks great." But even as the words left my lips, my mind was already elsewhere, already formulating a plan for this gift. This bottle, this symbol of a fractured bond, would not be for me. It would be for someone else, someone who had truly earned it, someone who had poured far more into my life than any blood relative ever had. It would be for my father-in-law, Robert. And the reason why I made that decision, the story behind that seemingly disrespectful act towards my own brother, is a complex tapestry woven with threads of deep gratitude, profound disappointment, and the quiet understanding that family isn't always defined by blood, but by the unwavering love and support that chooses you, time and time again. The truth is, my relationship with Mark, and indeed with my own father, had always been complicated. Growing up, our home was a battlefield of unspoken expectations and simmering resentments. My father, a man consumed by his own ambitions, saw us less as sons and more as extensions of his legacy, pawns in his relentless pursuit of success. Affection was a foreign language, praise a rare and precious commodity, doled out only when we achieved something that reflected well on him. Mark, being the elder, bore the brunt of this pressure, internalizing it until he became a mirror image of our father. Driven, yes, but also emotionally distant, quick to anger and fiercely competitive. I, on the other hand, rebelled quietly, seeking solace in books and solitude, yearning for a connection that never materialized. I remember countless birthdays where my father would hand me a gift, his eyes already scanning the room for the next business opportunity, his words hollow, devoid of genuine warmth. It wasn't just the absence of love that stung, but the palpable indifference, the feeling of being an obligation rather than a cherished son. When I chose a career path that deviated from his meticulously planned trajectory for me, the already thin thread connecting us snapped. "You're on your own," he declared, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. And just like that, I was. Cut off, adrift, left to navigate the choppy waters of adulthood with no compass and no anchor. Mark, ever the loyal son, had sided with him, reinforcing the chasm that had always existed between us. He saw my independence as a betrayal, my choices as a personal affront to the family name. So, when he handed me that bottle of wine, it wasn't just a gift. It was a reminder of all the years of emotional neglect, of the coldness that had defined my upbringing, of the family I had, but never truly felt a part of. I remember one particular Christmas. I must have been 10 or 11. I had spent weeks meticulously crafting a wooden birdhouse in shop class, sanding it smooth, painting it a vibrant blue, imagining the joy it would bring my father. I presented it to him with trembling hands, my heart pounding with a desperate hope for approval, for a flicker of pride in his eyes. He took it, barely glanced at it, and set it on a nearby table. Nice," he'd muttered, already turning back to his business newspaper. No smile, no hug, no genuine word of appreciation, just a dismissive grunt. That birdhouse sat on that table for weeks, gathering dust, a silent monument to my failed attempt at connection, before it was eventually relegated to the garage, forgotten. Mark, meanwhile, would present his meticulously researched stock market reports or his perfect grades and receive a curt nod, a fleeting, almost imperceptible smile, enough to fuel his relentless pursuit of our father's elusive approval. I learned early on that my efforts, my passions, my very being were simply not enough. I was a disappointment, a deviation from the perfect son he envisioned. This constant undercurrent of inadequacy shaped my early life, fostering a deep-seated insecurity that gnawed at my self-worth. I became adept at disappearing, at making myself small, at avoiding situations where my perceived failures might be highlighted. The silence in our home wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, pregnant with unspoken criticisms and unfulfilled expectations. Every interaction felt like an audition, every word a potential misstep. The air was thick with a tension that never truly dissipated, even during holidays or supposed family gatherings. We were a unit, yes, but a unit bound by obligation and appearance, not by genuine affection or mutual respect. My mother, a quiet woman, seemed to shrink under my father's domineering presence. Her attempts at mediating or softening the edges of his harshness often met with a dismissive wave of his hand. She was a victim of his emotional landscape as much as we were, perhaps even more so, having sacrificed her own dreams for a life that offered little in return, but a veneer of societal success. So when I finally broke free, when I chose my own path, it wasn't just a career decision. It was an act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to breathe in air that wasn't laden with the weight of their expectations. It was a flight from a cage, even if the bars were invisible. And Mark, my brother, the one who should have understood, the one who shared my blood, only reinforced the bars, locking me out with his unwavering loyalty to the very system that had stifled us both. That bottle of wine, then, was not just a gift. It was a reminder of the chasm, a tangible representation of the emotional distance that had defined our lives, a stark symbol of the family I had, but never truly felt a part of. Then came Sarah, my wife, and with her, Robert. From the moment I met him, Robert was everything my own father wasn't. He was kind, genuinely interested, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled, a warmth radiating from him that I'd never experienced from a paternal figure. He listened, truly listened, to my stories, my dreams, my fears. He offered advice not as a command, but as a gentle suggestion, always prefaced with, "Have you considered?" He celebrated my small victories with genuine enthusiasm, and offered a steady hand during my failures, never once making me feel inadequate or judged. He saw me, not as a reflection of his daughter's choice, but as an individual worthy of respect and affection. When I first met his family, I was struck by the easy laughter, the comfortable silences, the palpable sense of belonging that permeated their home. It was a stark contrast to the rigid formality of my own family, a revelation that love could be unconditional, a safe harbor rather than a demanding storm. Robert, in particular, embodied this warmth. He was a retired carpenter, his hands calloused from years of honest work, but his heart was soft, open, and endlessly generous. He taught me how to fix things around the house, patiently guiding my clumsy hands, never once scoffing at my lack of practical skills. He shared stories of his youth, of his struggles and triumphs, always with a humble wisdom that resonated deeply within me. He became the father figure I had always longed for, a quiet mentor who taught me more about life, about love, and about what it truly meant to be a man than my own father ever could. He was there for every significant milestone in my life with Sarah, our engagement, our wedding, the birth of our children. He was the first one at the hospital when our son was born, his eyes brimming with tears as he held the tiny bundle, a pure, unadulterated joy that felt like a balm to my long, aching soul. He was the one who taught my son how to fish, how to build a treehouse, how to laugh without reservation. He was the one who showed me, through his actions, what true fatherhood looked like. He was the anchor I never knew I needed, the steady presence that grounded me in a world that had often felt chaotic and uncaring. He was family, in every sense of the word, more so than anyone who shared my last name. I remember the first time Robert truly made me feel seen. It was shortly after Sarah and I had started dating. My car, an old beat-up sedan, had broken down on the side of the road. I called Sarah, embarrassed, and she immediately called her dad. Within 20 minutes, Robert was there, not with a tow truck, but with his toolbox and a calm, reassuring smile. He didn't lecture me about car maintenance or my poor choices. He simply got to work, humming softly as he diagnosed the problem. As he worked, he talked to me, not about cars, but about life, about finding your passion, about the importance of persistence. He asked about my dreams, my aspirations, things no one had ever bothered to ask me before. He treated me as an equal, as someone whose thoughts and feelings mattered. When the car was finally purring again, he refused any payment, just a hearty handshake and a warm smile. "Glad I could help, son," he'd said, and the word son resonated deep within me, a warmth spreading through my chest that I hadn't realized I was missing. It was a small act, but it was monumental for me. It was the first time I felt truly cared for, truly valued, by a paternal figure. It was the first time I felt like I belonged, not because of what I could achieve, but simply because I existed. Robert didn't just fix my car. He began to fix something inside me, piece by painful piece. He showed me that love wasn't a reward to be earned, but a gift to be given freely. He taught me that strength wasn't about dominance, but about compassion. He taught me that family wasn't about bloodlines and legacies, but about shared moments, quiet understanding, and unwavering support. He was the antithesis of everything I had known, a beacon of light in a world that had often felt dark and indifferent. He didn't just fill a void, he created a new space within me, a space for genuine connection, for vulnerability, for true belonging. He was the father I had always yearned for, the one who saw me, truly saw me, and loved me for exactly who I was, flaws and all. His presence in my life was a constant, gentle reminder that I was worthy of love, that I was enough, and that, more than any material possession, was the greatest gift I had ever received. So, when Mark handed me that bottle of wine, the decision was instantaneous, almost instinctual. It wasn't about the monetary value of the gift, or even the gesture itself. It was about what that wine represented, and who, in my heart, truly deserved to share in its enjoyment. It was about acknowledging the profound difference between a biological connection and a genuine, heartfelt bond. It was about honoring the man who had stepped into the void left by my own father, the man who had shown me what unconditional love and support truly felt like. It was about choosing family, not by accident of birth, but by deliberate, loving action. I knew Mark might be hurt, might even be angry, but I also knew that this was a truth I needed to live by, a principle that had become the very foundation of my adult life. This wine, this symbol of celebration and connection, belonged to Robert. It belonged to the man who had cultivated a rich, full life for himself and his family, not through ruthless ambition, but through quiet dedication, unwavering kindness, and a boundless capacity for love. It belonged to the man who had taught me the true meaning of family, not through grand pronouncements but through countless small, consistent acts of unwavering support. It belonged to the man who had, without ever trying, become the father I had always dreamed of having. The next evening, Sarah and I went over to Robert and Martha's for dinner, as we often did. The house smelled of Martha's famous lasagna, a comforting aroma that always made me feel instantly at home. Robert was in his usual armchair, reading the newspaper, a contented sigh escaping him as he lowered it when we walked in. "Arthur, my boy. Sarah, my dear, come in," he boomed, his voice warm and welcoming. After the usual pleasantries, and after Martha had shooed us into the kitchen to help set the table, I found my moment. "Robert," I said, pulling the wine bottle from the bag I'd discreetly brought in. "Mark gave me this for my birthday, but I wanted you to have it. I know you appreciate a good Cabernet." Robert's eyes widened slightly as he took the bottle, his gaze lingering on the label. "Arthur, this is a very fine wine, are you sure? This must have cost a pretty penny." He looked genuinely surprised and a little overwhelmed. "Of course I'm sure," I replied, my voice steady. "It's a gift, from me to you. You deserve it." He smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Well, thank you, son. That's very thoughtful of you. We'll save it for a special occasion." He placed it carefully on the counter, almost reverently. There was no need for grand explanations, no need to articulate the complex emotional calculus that had led me to this moment. Robert simply understood. He understood the unspoken language of appreciation, the quiet power of a gesture that transcended mere politeness. He knew instinctively that this was more than just a bottle of wine. It was a testament, a quiet declaration of where my true loyalties lay, where my heart truly resided. A few days later, Mark called. His voice was tight, strained. "So, I heard you gave my birthday wine to Robert," he stated, not asked. "Is that true?" My heart sank a little. I had anticipated this, but it didn't make it any easier. "Yes, Mark, it's true," I admitted, my voice calm. "Why?" he demanded, a hint of anger creeping into his tone. "Was it not good enough for you, or was it some kind of statement?" I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment to articulate the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. "It was a statement, Mark," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But not the one you think. It wasn't about the wine itself. It was about what it represented and who in my life has consistently shown up for me, who has been a true father figure, a true family." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Robert has been that person, Mark. He's been there for me in ways our own father never was, in ways you never were." The line went silent. I could almost hear his mind churning, processing the raw honesty of my words. He taught me what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, what it means to be truly present in someone's life. He's family, Mark. More than blood could ever make someone. There was a long, uncomfortable silence on the other end. Then Mark's voice, softer now, tinged with something that sounded like hurt or perhaps even a flicker of understanding. "So, I guess I'm not family enough for you then?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about enough, Mark," I replied, my own voice softening. "It's about who shows up. It's about who invests. It's about who loves unconditionally, and Robert has done that consistently for years. He's earned that place in my life, that respect, that gratitude. I didn't expect him to understand, not fully, not immediately. Our histories, our experiences, were too vastly different. He had always been the favored son, the one who effortlessly fit into our father's mold, while I had always been the outsider, the one who questioned, the one who sought a different path. He had never known the ache of paternal indifference, the gnawing loneliness of a childhood devoid of genuine warmth. He had never had to build his own family from scratch, choosing bonds based on love and respect rather than obligation. The conversation ended shortly after that, without resolution, without an apology from either side. But something had shifted. A truth had been spoken, a boundary drawn, a declaration made. I knew it might further strain our already fragile relationship, but I also knew I couldn't live a lie. I couldn't pretend that the wine, a symbol of connection, belonged anywhere but with the man who had truly connected with me, who had truly nurtured me, who had truly loved me. And in the quiet aftermath of that call, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had honored my truth, honored Robert, and in doing so I had honored myself. The wine was just a bottle, but the gesture, the choice, was everything. It was a testament to the power of chosen family, to the enduring strength of bonds forged not by accident of birth, but by deliberate acts of love, kindness, and unwavering support. It was a celebration of the man who had shown me what it truly meant to be a father, a mentor, a friend. And that, I realized, was a gift far more valuable than any vintage wine, a legacy far richer than any inheritance. It was the legacy of a heart finally at peace, finally home. In the years that followed, the ripple effects of that decision, that single act of choosing, continued to spread, subtly reshaping the landscape of my relationships. My relationship with Mark remained distant, a polite cordiality replacing the earlier tension, but the raw emotional intimacy that defines true brotherhood never materialized. We would exchange holiday greetings, perhaps a brief phone call on birthdays, but the chasm remained, a silent testament to the divergent paths our lives had taken and the fundamental differences in our understanding of what truly constitutes family. He continued his relentless pursuit of success, mirroring our father's ambition, perhaps never truly understanding the profound emptiness that can accompany such a singular focus. I often wondered if he ever reflected on that conversation, if my words had planted even a tiny seed of doubt in his carefully constructed world. I hoped so for his sake, but I didn't dwell on it. My energy was focused elsewhere, on the vibrant, loving family I had cultivated around me. Robert, on the other hand, continued to be my unwavering anchor. That bottle of wine, I later learned, was indeed saved for a special occasion, the day my daughter, his granddaughter, graduated from college. He opened it with a flourish, recounting the story of how he received it, his eyes twinkling with pride as he raised a toast to her achievements, and implicitly, to the bond we shared. It wasn't just a bottle of wine. It was a story, a shared history, a symbol of the love that flowed freely and unconditionally between us. He was there for every school play, every soccer game, every scraped knee and broken heart. He taught my children the value of hard work, the joy of simple pleasures, and the importance of kindness, not through lectures, but through his own quiet, consistent example. He was the grandfather who always had time for a story, a game of chess, or a patient explanation of how the world worked. He was the embodiment of the father I had always yearned for, and seeing him interact with my children, showering them with the unconditional love I had so desperately craved, filled a void in my soul that I hadn't even realized was still there. My own father, surprisingly, made a few tentative attempts at reconciliation in his later years. After his health began to decline, and perhaps as the relentless pursuit of wealth lost its luster, he reached out. His calls were awkward, stilted, filled with long silences and vague apologies. He never directly addressed the past, never acknowledged the pain he had inflicted, but there was a subtle softening in his tone, a hint of vulnerability that had never been present before. I met him for coffee a few times, listened to his stories, offered polite responses. There was no grand emotional reunion, no sudden outpouring of affection. The chasm was too deep, the years of neglect too profound to be easily bridged. But there was a quiet acceptance, a fragile truce. I realized that while I could forgive him, I couldn't forget, and more importantly, I couldn't force a connection that had never truly existed. My heart, my true home, was with Robert and Sarah and our children, with the family I had chosen. the family that had chosen me. The wine, then, became a powerful metaphor for my life. It wasn't about rejecting my past, but about choosing my present and shaping my future. It was about understanding that while blood ties are undeniable, the deepest, most nourishing connections are often forged through shared experiences, mutual respect, and unconditional love. It was about recognizing that true wealth isn't measured in material possessions or societal status, but in the richness of our relationships, the depth of our empathy, and the quiet joy of belonging. That bottle of wine, given with a forced smile and a heavy heart, had been transformed into a symbol of profound gratitude, a testament to the enduring power of chosen family, and a celebration of the man who had shown me what true fatherhood looked like. It was a reminder that sometimes the most significant acts of love are not grand gestures, but quiet choices, made with conviction and a heart full of gratitude. And as I reflect on my life now, surrounded by the laughter of my children and the comforting presence of my chosen family, I know that offering that bottle of wine to Robert was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was a small act, but it spoke volumes, solidifying the truth that had become the guiding principle of my life. Family isn't just who you're born to, but who you choose to love, and who, in turn, chooses to love you back, unconditionally, forever.